Significant step being taken by the U.S., Kate, essentially going at some of Russia's most powerful means to try and mitigate the effect of many of these sanctions that we've seen from the United States and the European Union and other Western allies. This will essentially stop the Russian central bank from transacting in dollars, preventing any U.S. persons from engaging in transactions with the Central Bank of Russia, as well as its sovereign direct investment fund, and essentially freezing many of its assets held here in the United States. This hits at this rainy day fund that Vladimir Putin has been building up for years, $630 billion in foreign currency reserves that were expected to be used to help prop up what we're seeing right now, which is a plummeting ruble. A senior administration official saying that, quote, Fortress Russia will be exposed as a myth. The European Union is also taking similar steps in coordination with the United States, and we're now learning as well that Switzerland, which has famously remained neutral in conflicts throughout history, is also adopting many of these EU sanctions and freezing the assets of many of these Russian oligarchs held in Swiss banks. A hugely significant step. Separately, at this hour, President Biden, he will be meeting with NATO leaders and other Western officials to talk about these latest steps and further sanctions on Russia, especially as Russia is now talking, or we've heard Vladimir Putin talk about putting his nuclear forces on heightened alert. Kate?
Jeremy, thank you. So the sanctions on Russia are having a major impact on citizens in that country. The Russian central bank has more than doubled a key interest rate, and Moscow's stock market was closed today after the ruble plunged nearly 30%. Worries that sanctions are going to be triggering cash shortages is leading to this. You're looking at massive lines at ATMs across Russia right now. CNN's Nick Robertson is in Moscow with more on this.
Kate, 36 different nations now have barred Russian aircraft from flying into their airspace, mostly European nations, Canada as well on that list. It means Russia is becoming increasingly isolated. Even Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, who was due to go on a trip to Geneva in Switzerland, that has now been cancelled. And the sanctions, the European and US sanctions, are beginning to bite home. President Putin appeared on television earlier on today with his prime minister, accusing the West of being an empire of lies as he lashed out about the sanctions. He said he was meeting with the prime minister to discuss the current financial and economic situation. What we know from the Kremlin spokesman is that Putin is meeting not only with the prime minister, he's meeting with the first deputy prime minister, with the head of the central bank, and the heads of other banks as well. The spokesman of the Kremlin said, look, Russia was planning for this all along. It's been creating this rainy day fund, $630 million in that fund, to deal with sanctions. Now he said, we're implementing that. But the big shocker here for Russia is what the United States is doing, what the European Union is doing as well, which is blocking Russia's access to that rainy day fund. And they are struggling. The ruble dropped 30% of its value at the beginning of the day. The stock market here was shut. The interest rate by the central bank was put up from 9.5 to 20%. So Russia is now reeling under the impact of these sanctions. This is much bigger, as promised by President Biden and other European leaders, much bigger than Russia has experienced in the past. Obviously, they've seen the ruble tank in 1998. They've undergone sanctions in 2014 for Russia's first invasion of Ukraine. But this seeming to be much bigger. Putin seems to be incredibly angry about the situation. The Russian government is still figuring out what to do about it, Kate.
Nick Robertson in Moscow. Nick, thank you so much. So the